Because you believed Abraham, I imputed to you for righteousness. Righteousness is based on, do you believe there's a God? Do you believe he's Lord in your life? Do you believe that you will follow him? And look what he says. He says, Abel's offering gave evidence, confirmation that he was a righteous man, so that when you give your tithes and offering, it shows that you are a righteous woman, you are a righteous man, you believe God is God. Look what he says. And he showed his approval of his gifts. In other words, God blessed him, he made him wealthy. That's why Cain was upset, because Abel was living a wonderful life. That's why God said, Cain, why are you doing this? If you do what Abel did, give me your best, you'll be smiling as well. In other words, Abel lived a wonderful life. Abel was wealthy, was rich, was living well because he honored God first. The principle of God is always take care of God first. He says, although Abel is long dead, look what he said. He's been dead for thousands of years. He still speaks to us by his example of faith. Here we go. What it shows to us is that tithing must be by faith. I must tithe by faith. I must tithe by faith. You know, everything in our life, it works by faith. I have to love God by faith. I can't get into the kingdom of heaven without faith. If I'm going to get saved, I got to have faith. If you confess with your mouth and believe in your heart that God raised Jesus from the dead, thou shalt be saved. I got to have faith to believe that. Every area of my life. So God says is that when you tithe, you got to have faith. That's why less than 20% of the church tithe. And I'm not just talking about Voices of Faith. I'm talking about the global church. That's why God said is that on that day when we get ready to enter into the kingdom of heaven, and that day is coming, he said that's going to be a whole lot of church folk who've been at church every Sunday, and God's going to say, I know you not. This is what Jesus says. He says, I'm going to say on that day, I know you not. He says, you hypocrite. He said, you portrayed that you loved me. You portrayed, but I never saw any evidence. When you tithe, you support the kingdom. When you tithe, you honor what God tells you to do. Regardless of what's happening in your household, you trust God first. You trust God, because all of us going to be responsible for that. All of us going to have a responsibility for understanding that. This is what God told me to tell you real quick. God told me, I know some of you are doing well financially. God told me to tell you that. Some of you, your job is good. Right now, you're living in a beautiful home. Your cars are nice. You got a little money in the account. And God told me, don't allow that good life to fool you as if I'm pleased with you. God said, I'm a long-suffering God. I give you every opportunity to get it together. Now God told me to tell somebody, I don't know who I'm talking to, but God told me to tell you he's a long-suffering God. But when he pulls the plug on you, when he calls you to lose your jobs, when husband and wife, ain't nobody in the house working, when he calls you, when he pulls the plug and you go from what you thought you were to all of a sudden you don't have anything, let me tell you about rock bottom. When you hit rock bottom, God will bring you back, because his word say he'll bring you back. But he never brings you back on your time schedule. So you ought to give God praise, I'm telling you. But he'll bring you back on his time, and he'll allow you to suffer, so he'll remind you that he's God. And then why do we have to wait till we lose it all to say, God, if you give me another opportunity, I'll tithe? When are we going to learn to tithe while we're on the mountaintop? When are we going to learn to bless God while we got it? When are we going to learn? When are we going to learn? Those that hit the lottery, you find out they broke in 3 years. Athletes who've allowed millions, 20, 30, 40 millions of dollars go through their hands. They live a lifestyle for 10 lifestyles. And at the end of the day, a year or two after they get out of the league, whatever sport it is, they don't even have a car to drive. Why? Because God said my long suffering will be tolerated for so long. But when I pull the plug, God said, when you hit rock bottom, I'm going to bring you back up, but it'll never be on the pace that you want to come up. I want to share somebody with you. Do you know what God called Voices of Faith? He calls this church his bride. In Ephesians 5:24-27, God called the church his bride. It was the bride. The bride, the church is God, is Jesus' wife. What did God say about his church? He says, upon this church, I'm going to build my rock. He's talking about Jesus Christ. And the gates of hell shall what? Not prevail against it. He loves his church. The one thing God loves is his church. When you learn how to bless God's church, your life will never be the same. You got to give God praise. I'm telling you what I know. God loves his church. God loves his church. God loves his church. God told me to tell you, and I'm telling you, I'm hearing from God right now. God told me there are many of you men and women here, you are good men and you are good women. God told me morally you want to do the right thing. Morally you want to make the right decision. God says many of you, God said he loves you with his whole heart. But God told me to tell you, don't get that twisted. God said even though he loves you, he said, but when you don't tithe, you separate yourself from him. God said that was my financial system to keep my church. Jesus said, I'm coming back for my church, to keep my church functioning. Though when you do that, I'll keep your life prospering. But God told me to tell you, he says, many of you, he said, are good people. You have a good heart and you want to do the right thing. God said he knows it. He said, but there's a lifestyle and there's some stuff and there's some people in your life that discourage you from trusting him.